Thank you, Don. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everyone this morning? All right, welcome. I'm Reverend J. Wolin, settled minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota. We are so glad to have all of you today with us, both in person and online as well. We invite all the visitors to remember they can participate in any of the events here at church. And if you want to get more information about church, if you're online, you can sign up on our website. There's a visitors button you can click and sign in to get our weekly newsletter, The Contact. And for those in person, right, the table right outside the sanctuary. And of course, we always have coffee and snacks after service. And we look forward to getting to know each of you. So I just have one question before we start. How many people are rooting for the Chiefs? Let me hear. Raise your hand. How many people are rooting for the Phillies? And how many people don't care or know what I'm talking about? A sacred tradition in American religion, I think, the Super Bowl, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. I now invite up Vicki. Are you here somewhere for an announcement about the auction?
Good morning again. I have a couple little bits of housekeeping for the auction. We have one fabulous cottage left that you can bid on at the auction table, which is now in Lexow because otherwise the wind was just going to blow us away. If you have won items at the auction, you can pay using a credit card, using the link in your invoice, and please consider adding the cost of using the credit card. If you prefer to pay with a cash or check or credit card, please come to the table in the Lexow room, and we'll be there for you to pick up some of your tangible items and pay for all of your items. So thank you very much for that. I have not yet thanked anybody for this. You know that there are just piles of people who have made this happen. I'd like to thank Dee and Roberta, who have been such help to me. The AV people back there, you know I don't usually talk into a microphone, and so Klaus and Doug have been really, really helpful. And we have had just so many volunteers. I can't even list them all. But without the volunteers, this just wouldn't have happened. There are teams, though, that worked on this auction committee, and I need to thank them all. So I'll be quick, I promise. There is a tech team. That was Karen Bush, Terry Holzinger, and Scott Rubin. If you're here, wave your hand, please. The publicity committee is Ava Whaley, Joanne Glady, and Laura Glady. Our donations team was Joanne Glady and Jim Keeney. Our food team, Yolanda Stevens, Ethan Massa, and Jan Wolin. Raise your hands if you're here. Logistics and tickets, David Cowell and Mary Jane Cowell. Bidding and table hosts were all Mary Jane Cowell. You can see there were just so many people. There was one more team, and that was my home team. So thanks to my husband, Don. Raise your hand, honey. Welcomed the auction into our home and let it live with us for the past months. And lastly, because of your generosity, both in donating and bidding, the approximate amount, pending all your payments and all, will be about $32,000. Thank you very much.
And of course, let's also recognize Vicki, who despite many changes went forward with a new vision that really was a lot of fun and successful. And it is now my pleasure to introduce back to our congregation Sanaya Carroll for our opening song. Thank you.
I live? Am I on? Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. This seems to be a very, no, this does not seem to be, this is a very special morning, as all of them are, but this is especially special, wouldn't you say? I'm going to do a tune called Stand Up. And when I say stand up, I mean it in terms of not just standing up, but in actually acting up. You know what I mean. And this is a song I wrote many years ago. I think I've always been kind of a protest child, a person who looked at the world and said, how could we make this world better? And so I offer this song in that sentiment. Stand up, join in together, so that the music can be heard. Be strong enough to carry this melody throughout the world. Oh, take your soul to a higher place, a haven in your heart, 'cause that's where you'll find the secret of who you really are. Stand up if you want to be counted. Rise up if you want to be heard. Just lift your voice to the heaven. Stand up, show that you really care. I once was told a story, yes I was, how a man would come along, oh, he'd lead us to the glory, and he'd teach us right from wrong, oh, but men have come and men have died, and though the legacy remains, I've come to understand that it's up to us to change. Stand up if you want to be counted. Rise up if you want to be heard. Just lift your voice to the heaven. Stand up, show that you really care. Whoa, 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 I made up my mind. There's gonna be some changes. If I look hard, I'll find the answers inside. I need you to shout, I need you to clap with me on this part. Stand up for the beauty and sharing of love. Stand up for the courage to be who you are. Stand up, get happy. Stand up, stomp the floor. Stand up, feel the rhythm. Let it go free. Stand up if you want to be counted. Rise up if you want to be heard. Just lift your voice to the heaven. Stand up, show that you really care. Whoa, stand up if you want to be counted. Rise up if you want to be heard. Just lift your voice to the heaven. Whoa, stand up, show that you really care. stand up, show that you really care.
So first, let me introduce, although we'll do a more formal introduction later, Paula Cole Jones, who was with us Friday night and Saturday for our workshop on a culture of inclusion. And I'll let her introduce herself later, but we have opening words today by Black Elk called The Sacred Hoop. You want to start first?
I'll start.
Okay.
Then I was standing on the highest mountain of them all.
And round beneath me was the whole hoop of the world.
And while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell.
And I understood more than I saw.
For I was seeing in the sacred manner the shape of all things of the Spirit.
And the shapes as they must live together like one being.
And I saw that the sacred hoop of my people was one of many hoops that make one circle, wide as daylight and starlight.
And in the center grew one mighty flowering tree.
To shelter all the children.
And I saw that it was holy. And so now, just as if you looked in the order of service, you noticed, right, it was not the reading that we chose. And this is what life is like sometimes, with uncertainty and change. And we need to learn to adapt. And so now, I invite you to please join me in the saying of our words of affirmation, which are in your order of service. And on there, as we light our chalice, as we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our proposed eighth principle. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
So, am I on? There we go. This is the time for all ages, but before we get to today's story, I have an announcement for all ages. And that is, if you are new to Unitarian Universalism or new to our church and you want to learn more, we are holding a class next Saturday from 9 until noon. We will provide a light lunch, and we will give you some of that historical background, not only about our faith and what it's all about, but also about our beautiful church, our beautiful campus, and the many, many things that we have going on here. However, for that class to happen, I need to have at least 5 people sign up today at the sign up outside the sanctuary at the welcome table. I feel like a huckster here, but yes, I need 5 people to sign up today to have that happen. If we aren't able to fill the class, then our next class will be in May. So it isn't your last opportunity if that's not something that you can make for next week. Thank you. So now for our story. The Circles All Around Us by Brad Montague and illustrated by Christy and Brad Montague. We begin by drawing a circle on the ground along each shoe. A safe little place for just one person. Nobody in this circle but you. You could keep that circle closed to everyone but yourself. But that would be like a library with just one book on the shelf. So let's draw a bigger circle for you and your family to share. Now you will see all that can happen in a circle full of care. It becomes a happier circle as more loved ones come to stay. And wouldn't it even be better if all your friends could come and play? So you stretch and draw your circle even bigger than it's been, and let a few more people know that they're welcome to come in. And in the circles all around us, everywhere that we all go, there's a difference we can make and a love we can all show. Yet, there are still many outside the circle who are different in all they do. And though it feels slightly uncomfortable, we draw a bigger circle for them too. Now, it doesn't mean the circle is easy. It can get harder the more we share. Like this little girl over here, I only wear dresses, and this little girl, I only wear comfy shorts. And this team pie, and this little girl, I'm quiet and shy. What wonderful things can happen when love is known and felt everywhere. As time passes, our eyes open, and we see others we really care for. And that's when we ask ourselves, well, what is this circle really there for? So let us create bigger circles all around us for the rest of our days, letting our care ripple out in a million little ways. In the circles all around us, everywhere that we all go, there's a difference we can make and a love we can all show. As our circles grow and grow, we watch them wonder-eyed. Remember, the first circle started with just the love you hold inside. So let's just take a brief moment to sit there and think about all the circles in our lives that we have created. There are so many circles that I have not thought about in a while, but still are a part of the circle of me. So if we have any younger UUs in the audience this morning, I invite you to come join me in the West Wing, where we will continue our discussion about circles. Thank you.
Our centering in words today are from the Reverend Sophia Betancourt, a speech she made at General Assembly 2017. And to note, Reverend Betancourt is going to be the new Unitarian Universalist Association president starting July, yes, running unopposed. I'd like to invite folks to spend some time thinking about what the heart of Unitarian Universalism really is. What are its central values? Where is the faithfulness for you? Where is the interwoven community and relationality for you? What are the things that can never be put down? What is inherent to us? And so as we go now into a time of silence, I invite all of us to contemplate these questions and other joys and sorrows that may be on our hearts today. So I thought, so today's service is going to be a little different. Instead of a sermon or two reflections, I thought Paula and I could just have a conversation and just share with you. So a little different every week. I thought about this. I don't want to waste our time on perfunctories. There is, if you want to know more about Paula, there are things here in the order of service, and unless there's something else you would like to introduce yourself about. She's a very esteemed leader in our Unitarian Universalist Association. I will leave it at that, and you can add whatever else.
Well, let me say, I think it would be helpful, if anyone has not read that, to know that I grew up in a Unitarian Universalist church, and I'm still here. So have that as part of your background context for whatever you hear me say.
Okay. So we've been talking about, over the last couple of days, the eighth principle and community of communities, this concept. Could you, for those who might not have been here, would you just want to give a brief overview of those?
Two. So the eighth principle, as you've read, grows out of our ongoing work, in particular around anti-racism. This work has changed from the civil rights period where we were working at integration. Integration was, it happened legally, but it did not do enough to really change society. So the anti-racism work then is the work of our time right now in terms of how we get beyond the old historic social constructs. And the eighth principle then calls us all to center this work as part of the spiritual life of our congregations instead of just handling it as social justice. The community of communities is like the circles. You know, we already have these communities in our congregations, and that is really a call for us to shift from the metaphor of family as church, which it doesn't go away, but it doesn't define us because families are too limited to hold all of the complexity of who we are, our identities, and our visions about the world. And so it's a shift from family to centering the community of communities, and that becomes then the metaphor for church, which is it offers so many places for people to enter and find that connection and place of belonging.
Yeah, I found that was, to me, I've taken many trainings with Paul over the years and studied and read this, but that was like, we always think in binary terms, like it's either family or community of communities. And so, and I even myself get caught up in that, right? We have to be a program church, or we have to be this kind of governance church. And it's like, we don't have to give up that family aspect. It's just not centered as how decisions get made. And I think as anyone here, family metaphor is a very complicated. Many people have very complicated and dysfunctional families, and so that carries over when we keep that metaphor sometimes as well.
It does, and the family structure was not designed for but so much inclusion, right? But in the community, it's endless. We are limited by our imagination.
Right, and it tends to be hierarchical. It's interesting, I was having a conversation at dinner last night where we were talking about this family metaphor. At some point, the children have to have separation and grow up and become independent parts of that family. And often that's always a challenge with a hierarchical structure sometimes. So I think it's really great to move away from that metaphor for centering each of these communities, because we do all have, right? I think about communities, whether it's music or small group ministry or social racial justice or green justice or environmental justice or interweave, religious children's RE, adult RE, all these different programs are all their own communities in and of themselves, worship. And so the one thing which you touched on yesterday, I think, is in this community of communities, how are decisions made and how do the different communities interact with each other, and how do people feel empowered within the communities?
Yeah. So let me say, too, that this is all pretty new, so you're going to discover things as you move forward. But in terms of the decision-making, within the communities, you could have, let's say you've got 7 communities that are participating in helping to make a decision about something that will impact the larger community. Each of those communities then would have a process for how they arrive at their agreement or consent around the decision to be made, and then representatives from each of those communities come together, and you get the decision that's informed by parts of the church, and a decision is made that then impacts the whole. It really is a more democratic process than the democratic process that most of us are familiar with, majority rules. And so the decisions are informed, but they're not just informed by the communities. The communities have already agreed in support of that decision. It's a much more efficient way of doing it than just taking account.
And they've been heard, right? I mean,
Everyone has been heard.
Right, when you're in the minority, right, it's very easy to lose a Democratic vote in a majority way. So at least, but your voices are then heard in the by the leaders or by the group that is making these decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the larger community stands a better chance of serving the wider community.
Right.
It's a healthier process, and I'm eager to see congregations that will help it to evolve.
So, all right, I've been peppering you with questions here.
I do have a question. I have a lot of questions for you. But one in particular, so I know you've been a Unitarian Universalist minister for 12 years,
right,
and a member even longer.
Right.
I'd like for you to speak to the change that you've seen over these years and your sense of where we are now with these new ideas in relationship to the past.
Yeah, so I remember when I first came into Unitarian Universalism, there was, just a few discussions about it. There was always something at General Assembly, but a lot of times that didn't seep back to congregational life. I did go to General Assembly often, but often it never got integrated into congregational life. I do think then it became a very educational process, starting maybe around 2011, around that time. I think, and for me in particular, I point to, although I always had a personal curiosity and investment in this work. Both my children are Korean. I grew up in the Jewish faith. We're being taught that we were oppressed and would someday be killed by the Christians, and so I was always taught to side with those who are oppressed. That was my upbringing, and the Trayvon Martin incident, which happened not far from where I lived at the time, and a very similar incident had happened to my son, where I got a knock on the door by the police, and they said because we had just moved into the neighborhood, and somebody called the police because they saw someone who didn't look like they belonged in the neighborhood. That happened to my son. And I really didn't think of it at the time, because it happened a number of years before the Trayvon Martin incident. And I was pissed at the neighbor, I was upset at the neighbor. Sorry for that slip of the tongue there, but I meant that authentically. But then, when Trayvon Martin incident happened, I said that very could have easily been my son if that person, the person who called the police on my son didn't wait for the police and followed him home. It very well would have been my son. And so, in me personally, that rose to a number of issues within our family to learn more and to hear what other struggles my son was having, and made me more aware of the need for change, not only in the world, but even in all aspects of our lives, school and church. And I found over time there's been ongoing educational offerings, and I see people over the 11 years that I was in Iowa, many people galvanized, particularly after George Floyd died. You couldn't avoid, everybody was home with COVID, it was on TV, you couldn't avoid, even though it's been happening probably every week throughout all those 11 years, people finally got it then. For whatever reason, that seemed to click for many white people, and that seemed to galvanize people to really get engaged in systemic work, other than just an advocacy, other than just educational stuff. So it's been a journey, and there are people who struggle with it, and there are people who are on different, this is the one thing I've learned, there are people who are on all different parts of the journey and the path. And we have to understand that and make space for where people enter into this. Where some people, like I led a class recently, Race, the Power of an Illusion, which was more of an intro to racism. So if you've been doing this work for 10 years, it might have seemed basic. But there are a lot of people who haven't been doing this work for 10 years. And so we have to have courage, and we have to be willing to be open to risk and uncertainty, and still move forward. And because we're always learning new, even I said, like, no matter how many times I do this study and this work and interact with the larger community, I'm always learning new things, and about myself, really.
Oh, right.
It's really all about myself and what my biases are, and you know, what my blind spots are. And so I think that's part of spiritual growth. That is one of the reasons I find so meaningful about Unitarian Universalism. It's really allowed me to define my values and to grow as a human being.
Yes, and you grow by being in community.
Right.
Right.
Right, by meeting people I'm not, you know, I may not have something in common with, and learn from that.
Yeah. You know, something I think will help to put this in perspective. I get excited about the eighth principle and congregations that have adopted it, because the children in those congregations will grow up with this. They won't even question it. It'll be second nature, just like our children have grown up with technology. They've got skills beyond what many of us have. And so if we make it present, if we are doing our work, we may not carry the ball over the goal, right?
Right.
But we will be doing the work that we need to do to move it down the field and to create the kind of world our children need.
And so I want to say one last thing, that although I know this is a lot of uncertainty, you know, what's going to happen in the future. But I want you to know, whether the eighth principle is passed or not, whatever happens with communities, I want you, there will be always one certainty that will happen. We will take an offering on Sunday morning. And so I ask you to be as generous as you can as the basket comes around. And then as well, if you're online, there's a link that you can as well donate by, or if you're here on your cell phone. Let this sacred time begin. next reading is attributed to W.E.B. Du Bois. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some time in a more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest. And now once more, Sanaya Kara.
I'll get that. Don't forget. I'm especially moved by what Miss Paula Jones said, commenting about the children, because that's so amazing. It's just, if we give them good air to breathe, they'll be accustomed to breathing good air, and they'll know when they smell smoke. I'm going to do a tune. It's called Canción, well, it has a couple of names, Canción de las Américas or Canción de Todos. It is a Spanish song, South American song. I believe it's written by Mercedes Sosa. She's passed on, but she was an amazing activist and singer, amazing performer. Mercedes Sosa, Google her, look her up on YouTube. She's amazing. And this song, to me, it speaks to the thing that we as Americans take for, like we say, oh, I'm American, right? But what is America? Is it the United States only? Because in our minds, that's what it generally is. But if you speak to someone who's from another part of the Americas, they're going to have a whole other thought of that and about us as well. So the song is speaking about all of us together, all the wonderful riches of this continent, that's America, as in total, okay, in total. Oops. Salgo a caminar. Wait a minute, my guitar's not tuned. Hold on, can't do this. Yeah. Sorry about that. A little better. Salgo a caminar por la cintura cósmica del sur. Piso en la región más vegetal que el tiempo y que la luz. Siento al caminar toda la piel de América en mi piel. Llevo en mi sangre un río que libera en mi voz su caudal. Sol de Alto Perú, rostro a Bolivia está mi soledad. Un verde Brasil besa mi Chile, cobre mineral. Subo desde el sur hasta la entraña de América total. Una raíz de un grito destinado a crecer y estallar. Todas las voces, todas, todas las manos, todas, toda la sangre puede ser clamor en el viento. Canta conmigo, canta, hermano americano, libera tu esperanza con un grito en la voz.
Okay, round two. So what do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about theology.
Oh,
in
theology.
church.
We are in a church, that's right.
Yeah. So one of the things that makes Unitarian Universalism what it is, and I will say my work with the revisions to Article 2, we won't get into the technical stuff of that, but it has really made very clear to me that one of the things that makes us unique is the theological pluralism. Our embrace of theological pluralism makes Unitarian Universalism something different.
Right.
And I think something very special, especially in terms of a context for what it means to live in diverse community, right? And also that we are a living tradition, and that revelation is never sealed. So Unitarian Universalism can be shaped to be relevant to the times in which we live. I think that's what draws most of us here.
Right.
And the freedom for that search for truth and meaning.
Right, and I agree with that completely, that search for and exploration of meaning in multiple different ways and opportunities, and creating an environment to do that. So the question that I often think about from a theological standpoint, I think that makes our theology is something I would call a relational theology, because I often say we are like-valued people, not like-minded people, because if you've ever been in a meeting with us, you know we all have different ideas about things, right? But we do have like values, and so with all of our different backgrounds, contexts, even within here, even within a monocultural state, there are many theological differences among our members. And so the key for me, from a theological standpoint, is, are we in right relationship with each other? To me, that is the underlying thing that allows the plurality, which is being in right relationship. How do we interact? How do we treat each other, even though we may have different opinions about certain things? And that, to me, is the critical aspect of the theology here.
Yes, so what holds all of these differences together? And then our agreements, which are our covenants, about how we stay in right relationship.
Right, covenants, I mean, and it's a big thing. You know, I think in the Jewish tradition, which I come from, there's always a covenant between God and Abraham and the Jewish people. And here our covenants are amongst ourselves, between each other as members and as member congregations of the UUA. And to me, those are both, some of them are implicit, but some of them are very explicit. And that's really what I like about the eighth principle, and even about the Article 2. The one thing I really like is that each value, so for those who haven't read Article 2 there, it lists the values, and then it has a covenant statement underneath each one. And to me, like, this is what we are committing to as a people. And so it gives me something specific to sort of hold on to. This is who we are. This is not just who we are, but this is what we do. And And I also always want to point out, at least this statement attributed to Martin Buber, although I don't know he actually worded it this way in German, but that we are a covenant-making, covenant-breaking, covenant-remaking people. And I think that's true. We all fall sometimes, and so we have to re-covenant with each other.
As you said that, a thought that came to me is part of the change that we are trying to forge or support is that covenant making, covenant breaking. Some covenants need to be broken.
Good point.
Right?
Yes.
That, do we really understand what it is to live in a just world yet?
Right.
And I'm not so sure that we are there. So there are some covenants that have been made, and some of you may have heard me say this weekend, Reverend Rebecca Parker, one of my favorite theologians, by the way, said before you write a new covenant, first you have to be honest about the covenant you are already in. So some of the challenges and turmoil that we've had has been the confronting of the covenants that already exist and breaking them so that we can draw those circles wider, right? Some of those covenants keep the circle
we
tight.
have certain structures right now, right? We covenant like how are decisions made here, right? And do we include other voices in that decision making? And so how we think about structures as well, and who are members, and who are all these covenants that we have. It's always important to not all of them need to be broken, but it's always good to rethink periodically, which is what the UUA actually bylaws require us to do.
Every
15 years to rethink our principles and purposes, Article 2, and sources, right?
Yeah. So, one thing that I have no way of knowing, I am curious, I wish I could read a crystal ball, is how theology might change in the future as we do more work of inclusion.
Well, I think that is an interesting question. We are always evolving, I think, as a religion but as a species, we're evolving. And I do think that's the greatness of Unitarian Universalism. And the thing that attracted me is that we don't just stand, right? We don't just say, this is it for all ever time. And so it allows our theology to be flexible and to change over time, and to be open.
And if you think about, you've studied, so you know the history, the early Christian origins of Unitarianism and Universalism, and then it starts to shape into something different, and then we go through the period of transcendentalism.
Right, which now, funny, at the time, the transcendentalists were all mostly pushed out of Unitarianism, many of them, and now they are the ones that we look upon often and model ourselves after. So it is funny how ideas circle back around sometimes and find new fertile earth to grow in sometimes. And I think that's a really important thing to remember is resiliency, that sometimes the time isn't right, but sometimes it is. And if you don't try, if you don't plant those seeds, sometimes at some point those seeds will grow. If they didn't do that, we might not be where we are today. And so I think about what can we do today, so 100 years from now, or 200 years from now, it will create this beloved community that we hope for. Vibrant, thriving. So when we work on our mission next year, remember those words, thriving, vibrant, I like that.
Beloved community. And so also in terms of this, imagination of how theology might change in time, we cannot predict it, but we can shape it.
Absolutely.
It's even better than a prediction, right?
Absolutely, right. And I loved what you said, though, earlier, which is you know, our children, if they grow up, or grandchildren, if they grow up with it, it'll be second nature to them. You know, I think about even when I was growing up as a child in the 70s, I had an aunt that was very active in the feminist movement, and she would always correct my language all the time. She said, not policeman, Jay, it's police person, or, you know, not, yeah.
Well, we're still doing that with ourselves. The language changes.
Right, but you know, as a kid, it was like, oh, okay, you know, but when I grew up, it was second nature to me to say that. So when I was in the workplace, I didn't have any of the challenges that many of my contemporaries had, because I had somebody modeling for me what was the approach. And language is important. I do think language is very important, because it is a cue, and it creates these metaphors, and either positive or negative. So I think we are almost out of time. Any last thoughts?
This is just the beginning.
Right, the beginning of a long conversation I hope we continue to have. Thank you so much for being with us here this weekend, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to have our closing song by Sanaya, which I hope you all join in and clap and dance, whatever the Spirit moves you to do.
Oops, did I forget the lyrics? Yep, here we go. This next tune is by request, which is wonderful. I'm just trying to find my, I believe it's called Emma's Revolution. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. Good. If you're not, it's fine. You will be. And what I love about this tune is it says it's right there, keep on moving forward. So I'm not going to even play guitar too much on that, because you can see guitar is not my gift, but it's an accessory, kind of works a little bit. And I sing a lot better than play. But with this tune, I'm going to really need your help. Now, I know we got some singers out here, right? And this whole thing, I'm so excited about this whole morning, about everything that I've heard today. It's just so enlightening. I mean, the whole thing about the kids. And you know, other people know that too. And so it's really, you know there's other forces at work with the kids. So but we're on the good side, right? We're going to make it work. We know what to do, so let's do it. Yeah. Okay. Talk is wonderful, but sometimes but we got to do actions. So moving forward, that's the spirit we're bringing into it. I'm just going to play a chord, and then I'm going to sing. And I want everybody, even if somebody told you you can't sing, sing. Okay? We don't care. And because there's something special that happens with that vibration. This whole vibration of music and of all the words that we're saying today, that all makes a difference to all of us. So, gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. No way. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Come on, stand up with us. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly, never turning back, no, no, never turning back. Gonna reach across our border, oh, oh, gonna reach across our border, hey, hey, hey. Gonna reach across our borders, never turning back, no, 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 never turning back. Gonna end the occupation, oh, end the occupation, hey, end the occupation, never turning back, oh, never turning back. Gonna stop these wars together. Whoa, gonna stop these wars together. Oh, gonna stop these wars together. Never turning back, no, never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Never turning back, no, no, never turning back. Never.